Jake, I don't get these notes. I'm just supposed to introduce the show and then toss it to this weirdo for a quick word? All right, you're the boss. Three, two. What's up, Headliner Nation? Before we jump into this episode, we've got a quick word from a special guest. Thanks so much, Kyle. Headliner Nation, does quarantine life have you down? Have you not been able to get to the gym? Have your hair done? Or seen that special someone? Well, we've got the cure for you here at the Fantasy Headliners. That's right. Head over to thefantasyheadliners.com where you can pre-order our 2020 Fantasy Football Draft Guide. Now, ladies and gentlemen, not only have users purchased the draft guide and experienced a side effect of winning fantasy football championships, but a small amount of users have also said that they've experienced stiffened pecs, a pear-shaped booty, the ability to go 6 to midnight and have a passionate night of lovemaking, and of course, you guessed it, male pattern baldness out the door. Headliner Nation, this is exactly what you need to get through quarantine life and get ready for the 2020 fantasy football season. Head over to thefantasyheadliners.com right now to pre-order your guide. Kyle, back to you. Jake, what the What's going on, Headliner Nation? Welcome back to the Fantasy Headliners. And after that intro, the only thing we can do is just jump straight into the video. So for today's video, we're going to go a little bit more in depth. I know that during the off season, we throw out so much information and we talk about so many players at a time that we really try to get through as much information as possible. But today we're going to be focusing on one player, a wide receiver a lot of you have asked about, but we wanted to just throw out some of that deep diving information that you will be able to come to expect from our videos as we move forward and get closer to the season. So today we're going to be talking about DK Metcalfe. That's right, second year DK Metcalfe is who we are going to be talking about tonight. And let's just run through his 2019 stats here real quick. 16 games, 100 targets, 50 receptions, 900 receiving yards, 15.5 yards per reception, 7 touchdowns. Among rookies last year, he was third in receiving yards, first in targets, second in receptions, and tied for second in touchdowns. Now, the reason for this video, we've been getting a ton of questions about DK Metcalfe and what do we think we're going to see from him in 2020. And the one thing that I kind of want to focus in on is how much the Seattle Seahawks run the football, because it really got me to thinking. Teams that run the ball a lot, not those middle ground teams, but those top teams, those top 5 teams that run the ball the most often in a season, how can they really produce top-end wide receivers? So I wanted to take a look at the last several years' worth of data to really see what we have out there for those wide receivers. Now, let's take a look at the numbers over the last few years. These are the teams that ran the ball the most. Last year, Baltimore led the league with 596 rushing attempts, almost 600 times rushing the football last year. In 2018, they also led the league at 547. Now, over the past 2 years, the Seattle Seahawks have ranked third and second. They ran the ball 481 times last year, 534 times the year before that. In 2017, you see Jacksonville at the top, followed by Minnesota, Carolina, Buffalo, and Dallas. And then 2016, Dallas was at the top, followed by Buffalo, New England, Tennessee, and San Francisco. So there you see it. So the top teams rushing the football have had at least 450 rushing attempts over the last several years. 471 and 471 was that bottom number the last 2 years. Dallas at 480 in 2017 and then 2016. San Francisco at 458. So those teams that are running the ball that much, can they really produce top-end wide receivers? Because some of you are tossing out numbers, and we see them in the comments. You really expect DK Metcalfe to take a leap forward. But based on those numbers we saw from him last year, can the Seattle Seahawks really run the football as much as they have over the last 2 years, support DK Metcalfe as a top wide receiver option, and also don't forget Tyler Lockett is there, who has had back-to-back very good seasons. So since 2016, how many teams in the top 5 of rushing attempts have produced a wide receiver one? 3 teams. Since 2016, there has only been 3 wide receiver ones on a team that was in the top 5 of most rushing attempts on the season. 2018 saw 2 of those. DeAndre Hopkins was a wide receiver 2 in 2018, and Michael Thomas was the wide receiver 6 in 2018. This was half PPR formats, and then 2017, Adam Thielen was our wide receiver 10. So over the last 4 seasons, the top 5 teams in rushing attempts have only produced a wide receiver 1, that's a top 12 wide receiver, 3 times. So right there, that number is going to tell you that DK Metcalfe more than likely will not see a wide receiver 1 season in 2020. Is it possible? Yes. I like DK Metcalfe, but I am not ready to put him in the same company as DeAndre Hopkins or Michael Thomas. Now, obviously, Adam Thielen has been very, very good over the last few years, but 2017, to me, that's still an outlier. Even with as good as he is, on a team like that ran the ball so much, I'm not really to hedge my bets against those numbers. So then I wanted to take even a step back. Okay, wide receiver 1 status, probably not possible. But what about teams that finished with a wide receiver 1 and a wide receiver 2, or teams that finished with a wide receiver 2 and a wide receiver 3? Folks, the numbers are even worse. That's right. Since 2016, there has only been 1 team to produce a wide receiver 1 and a wide receiver 2 on a team that was top 5 in rushing attempts. And that was 2017 with before mentioned Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs. Adam Thielen was the wide receiver 10. Diggs was the wide receiver 19. Teams with wide receiver 2 and wide receiver 3 since 2016, also only 1 team. And that was last year's Seattle Seahawks with Tyler Lockett as the wide receiver 14 and DK Metcalfe as the wide receiver 32. So right there, that tells us that for the first time in 4 years, and I did a little bit further back on the numbers too, the numbers don't get better the further back that we go because the teams aren't throwing the ball nearly as much in the past decade as they were over the last several years. So the numbers don't get much better. So even just looking at a small sample size of the last 4 years, if we go back even further, the numbers aren't going to get any better. So 2019, last year, Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalfe, that to me is our ceiling for 2020. So that right there is what we are probably looking at best. Could these two flip-flop? Absolutely. What I could potentially see, and we've said it on the show many times already, DK Metcalfe could end up being the guy that gets the most volume of the wide receivers in Seattle, and then Tyler Lockett is more of your big play guy. I could see these two reversing course, and in 2019, DK Metcalfe finishes as a high wide receiver too, while Tyler Lockett falls back into that wide receiver. Again, that's what I could see happening. Do you want to place your bets on that, though? Because if you take a look at the numbers even a little bit more, look at the top receivers on a top 5 rushing team since 2016. So this is the highest a wide receiver finished. We've had 3 since 2016 teams with top 5 in rushing attempts. We've had 3 wide receiver 1s. We've had 8 wide receiver 2s. We've had 2 wide receiver 3s. 4 wide receiver 4s, 1 wide receiver 5, and 2 wide receiver 6. So that, again, that is the number of the wide receiver that finished highest in half PPR scoring on a team that finished in the top 5 of rushing attempts. More than likely, the top finisher on a team in the top 5 of rushing attempts is going to be a wide receiver 2. So to think that DK Metcalfe is going to be a wide receiver 1 in 2020 is not going to happen. Let's not go that high with the DK Metcalfe love. More than likely, he's going to fall within that wide receiver 2 range. However, again, history tells us that it's difficult to assume that both Metcalfe and Lockett are going to be able to have sustainable value over the course of a season because teams just haven't been able to produce 2 top-end wide receivers when they run the ball as much as Seattle has the last 2 years. DK Metcalfe right now is currently going as the wide receiver 21 and 43 overall in ADP. I could see that going a little bit higher as the offseason goes on. But also keep in mind, Brian Schottenheimer is still the offensive coordinator in Seattle. That hasn't changed. He's been the offensive coordinator the last 2 years. So you can probably expect the same thing to happen again this year. I know they're a little bit beat up in the backfield right now. Chris Carson, yes, he appears to be healthy by the time the season starts. And they made a pick of DJ Dallas in the draft, but they didn't really spend a high pick. Rashad Penny, we have no idea when he's going to come back. But you have to assume they're probably going to still run the ball quite a bit in 2020. When you look at some of these teams, again, it just, through the numbers, 3 instances where a team has produced a wide receiver 1, 1 instance where they've had a wide receiver 1 and a wide receiver 2, and 1 instance where they had a wide receiver 2 and a wide receiver 3, and that was the Seahawks. So our absolute best ceiling is that DK Metcalfe is more than likely a mid-ranged wide receiver 2 in 2020. And if he is, then Tyler Lockett is going to be a wide receiver 3 at best. So that's what the data is telling us. It could possibly turn out differently. Maybe Seattle doesn't run the ball that much this year, and they just end up throwing more often, and that could possibly happen as well. And if it does, then yes, Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalfe absolutely will both have probably wide receiver 2 value. But if they finish top 5 in rushing attempts again for a 3rd straight season, there's more than likely a small 0% chance, maybe between 0 and 1, that these two are going to be both fantasy viable on a weekly basis. So more than likely, you're going to have to pick a side this year, Headliner Nation. If you like DK Metcalfe, you got to run with DK Metcalfe. If you don't like DK Metcalfe and you got to run with Tyler Lockett, then you got to run with Tyler Lockett and hope DK Metcalfe doesn't get his. Me personally, I'll take DK Metcalfe, but I'm only going to take him if I can get him as my personal wide receiver 3. If he's my wide receiver 3 on my team, then I'm okay with it. But if you're getting him to be higher, if you spend a lot of early picks on wide receiver and maybe a quarterback or a tight end, and you push wide receiver off and you draft DK Metcalfe as your wide receiver 1, you're probably going to be regretting that by the end of the season. So a lot of off season left. A lot of things to take a look at, but that's just breaking down some of those in-depth numbers to show you how difficult it may be or how difficult of a path DK Metcalfe may have this season. He is not a bust by any means, but it could be a little bit more difficult than it was last season. Headliner Nation, thanks so much for tuning into this episode of the Fantasy Headliners. Make sure you hit that like button and comment down below. Let me know what you think about DK Metcalfe. Where are you trying to draft him this season? And don't forget, if you haven't subscribed to the Fantasy Headliners, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell notifications so anytime we go live, you'll be able to be notified. Thanks so much, Headliner Nation. I'll catch you on the next episode. Stay safe, stay healthy, and have a good one.